Hello, welcome back. Alyssa here with my 2020 bullet journal flip through. I thought this would be primarily focused on the designs of my bullet journal spreads and like how I chose to decorate them. But instead, what I ended up talking a lot about is what I did and how I did it, and a little bit of which journal spreads I liked the most. But here we are, learning stuff all the time, even when we don't mean to. So to start off, this is my one journal I used this year. I'm pretty surprised. I don't even think I'll fill this thing up completely. I think I'll have a few pages left at the end of the year. This is The Author by GLP Creations. I got it on Amazon. It has 192 numbered dot grid pages of Tomoe River paper. I just really like Tomoe River paper, and that's pretty much what I was looking for when I found this notebook. As far as the journal goes, I got another one for next year, so I like it just fine. I have no complaints about the journal either. So let's get started here. Start flipping through. I'm gonna kind of talk about each month and just sort of flip through slowly as I go. So starting with January, it was a big start to a crazy year. I always go big in January. This year I focused really heavily on some pretty drastic fitness goals, and I did it. I did what I set out to do, which is pretty impressive. I did no sugar, no caffeine for the whole month of January, put a focus on meeting protein goals and adhering to a strength training routine, which at this point was just 2 strength workouts a week and a yoga session every week, because I was still working and commuting 5 times a week. For this month, I pretty much just listed out my goals and did a pretty basic habit tracker. We have this weekly reflection box here that got a little bit crowded. I also had this spread I really like where I marked down one task that I wanted to do each day, like just some daily action to get myself closer to my goals. I really like these. I use this in a lot of the months for this year. And this month, fueled by New Year energy, was a roaring success, I would say. I did spend a lot of time with headaches or just feeling bad because of sugar withdrawals and the sudden increase in exercise, but I stuck with it, I powered through, and I did what I wanted to do. This was also before lockdown, as I mentioned, and also before my remote job, so I was bicycling to the train 5 times a week as well. So on top of all the other stuff I was doing, I was also doing a bunch of cardio, which, thinking back, that's a ton. Go me. As far as dailies go, I pretty much use this 2-column sort of setup every day for the entire year, where I have a task list on one column and just a little note about the day in the other column. I like it. It's nice and comfortable. I can set it up as I go. I don't need to prep anything in advance. And I get to use my nice fountain pens. Near the end of January, I published the first of the 2 Skillshare courses I published this year. They always take so much work, but it really is worth it. I feel like people get a lot out of those. Planning for February, I was trying to sort of lay out my yearly goals in advance. Here I had the idea that if I focus hard on writing goals, I can take a little break from writing in March. That's not quite what happened, but it's what I thought would happen. So in February, I focused really hard on writing goals. I wanted to finish a close reading of a book, revise my NaNoWriMo 2019 novel, write a short story, and then just sort of maintain my other goals. This was also the second half of my 8-week fitness challenge, so I also tracked body weight next to my habit tracker. And I set up a place this month to track some details about my strength workouts. I didn't end up using all the slots in this chart, but I really like how this ended up looking. And here I have the daily action spread, but in this one I put an option for a bonus action, and I don't actually like this in retrospect. I think it turns this into a sort of task list rather than the one focus for the day that it was meant to be. When it came time to plan for March, I didn't make that much progress on my novel revision, so I kind of just carried that over to the next month and thought about focusing on 3D modeling as well. And at the end of February, I actually got sick, which is really rare for me, and it was kind of like a long, lingering sort of thing. And it was before like all the news had really reached us. Like I think the pandemic had existed, but we didn't really know about it. So I have absolutely no idea if that was it or if it was just a normal like kind of flu. But I'm curious. I've been wondering this whole time. I just want to say I love the March spread. I love everything about it. I love the gradient background, the tree branches, these blank squares where I put all my goals. I think here is where I started to feel the pressure from not being very good at writing, basically, not going as quickly, not getting as much done. But instead of pivoting to something else, I focused harder on writing. Looking back, it's easy to see how much time I spent on it, but I don't think I realized at the time just how much energy and focus was going into something that didn't really go anywhere. I still don't have a novel project that I feel like is the one, quote unquote, that I feel like I could publish. I think it's going to be really hard for me to sort of admit, but I want to try and avoid big writing goals next year. So here is where lockdown really started, and it just shook up my whole routine. And my dailies also got very sparse. January, February, the pages were very full of writing and journaling, and here they're mostly empty. I even have this page where I took some notes about recalibrating because I knew I was getting overwhelmed and a little bit off track. It didn't totally help, but I think it's always good to sit down and think about that kind of stuff. In April, I started to embrace being home all the time with an Animal Crossing spread. I really love the colors on this one, these nice pastels, cute little hearts to track my habits and things. You can see I have a writing tracker here. I spent another month trying to write, and you can see I didn't do it. There's two little dots in here, and it's almost completely empty. It's really interesting how I didn't see this pattern at the time. I didn't kind of realize that I was trying the same thing over and over again and not getting anywhere. And even realizing that I was sort of getting off track, I didn't stop to think about what I needed to change. Also in April, because I was not commuting anymore, I had an extra 2 hours that I wasn't spending standing on a train, and so I started streaming on Twitch. I had a lot of fun. I have a lot of notes in here about how fun it was and all these things I was thinking about doing. In general, April was pretty busy, especially with the addition of streaming. I was under a pretty tight deadline at the time, and then streaming used up the rest of my nights, and so I was still trying to find some balance. And you can kind of see the effects of that in May, as this was very bare bones. The style is very simple, just plain ink, and I tried to reestablish a routine, keeping my monthly pages very simple and each of the individual habits very short. So we have like 15 minutes of writing, there's writing again, 15 minutes of walking, and so on. I also started doing some game development in May, thinking that this would be the month for my game jam. I actually ended up doing it in June, but I kind of was trying to do it in May. So I spent this month getting some ideas down and planning out the game that I later started calling Project Caribou. And I actually did weekly habit trackers for this month because I felt in my core that things were spiraling out of control and that I really needed more structure. And so I tried to get that with the habit trackers, and I think it did help a little bit. Then at the end of May, I got told that starting in June, I would not have a job anymore, which is not news I've ever received in my life. That was a pretty big, new, scary experience. I panicked pretty bad, but I responded to the panic by just making a lot of plans, trying to figure out like what I could do to hit the ground running in June, to sort of get myself out of that situation. And then in June, I added some fun and some color back in. This month was the first month in probably 10 years that I wasn't working or in college or working and in college. And because I'm the main income generator for my family, I was extra scary because there was nobody else to sort of keep us afloat while I looked for a job. So I put job hunting and exploring ways to make an income that maybe weren't a job at the top of my list. I have a lot of creative endeavors for this month, such as Twitch, game development, and also this formal job hunting spread where I tracked different companies and like when I interviewed and so on. And in order to measure sort of like how viable online work would be for paying our bills, I tracked things like Twitch follows, Medium reads, Skillshare, premium minutes, anything that I thought I might be able to monetize. Luckily, I did find a new full-time job because I think it would have taken several months of really focused work to see any true promise in like a content creation sort of career. Self-employment is very hard, and it takes a lot to get it going, so kudos to everyone out there who makes it work. In July, I tried out this spread that I actually really don't like very much. This might be my least favorite month. It doesn't have a lot of color, just this metallic watercolor, which I usually like, but without the color underneath, it just looked kind of bad. In July, I put a lot of work into my third Skillshare course to finish off the series, as well as continuing to ramp up on Twitch streaming. I was having so much fun without a day job to do. I was doing like 2 streams a day some days, which was probably too much. But I enjoyed it, you know, and I made a lot of friends. I tracked stats this month pretty well, but my habits were kind of abysmal. I spent a lot of time interviewing in July and also preparing for interviewing. I've talked about this a little bit before, but software engineering interviews are incredibly varied. There's a lot of different kinds of interviews, and usually they're very technically challenging, so they are kind of like doing a test. Like, you have to study for them like you would study for a test. So I was doing a lot of studying. I didn't really mean to schedule so many interviews in such a short amount of time. It's just kind of how it ended up. I did really painfully bad on some of them, but other ones I did very well. And, you know, that's what got me my current job, was some of the ones that went well. And then I started that job at the end of July, so pretty good timing in that. A lot of luck on my part as well. August was such a blur, starting my new job and adapting to that new routine, that I didn't really journal at all. I didn't set up a monthly spread or even pretend. I didn't write like August in big letters anywhere. It just went straight from July right into August. There are a couple dailies in here, but for the most part, I just did work and tried to get a handle on things. September is when I got my fancy treadmill and started running. I also tried to get some better diet habits in there, eating green vegetables and tracking protein. I did all right on that. I think I could have taken it a little bit more seriously. I don't love the designs on this monthly spread either. It was a nice idea, but it ended up looking kind of childish. I don't really like looking at it now. I also started reworking my Nano 2019 novel here, trying again to maintain a very rigid and ambitious writing schedule that did not work. It really was months and months of struggling to write this novel and not realizing that I hadn't made any progress. It's so interesting to like look back and see these patterns. I do really like some of the dailies in here though. Having a lot more fun with decoration, even if it's just the same old ink I've been using for most of the year. I love the design for October. This warm, fiery color combination is something I can always get on board with. I like the sort of swoopy, abstract shapes. My running goals went really well in October, but I was still trying to write. So much time spent writing. The weird thing is, though, I feel like October is when it really started to click, but then because November came up next, National Novel Writing Month. By the time I had really figured out what I was doing, I switched gears to work on something new for NaNoWriMo. So it was a big mess, really, my writing routine and my writing goals for 2020. I had another couple of weeks where I just lost my will to journal, which is kind of a bummer because a lot of these really nice, pretty spreads went unfinished. Oh well. Near the end of October, my pages start to get really empty, but I just kept on keeping on. November's monthly spread was kind of an afterthought, and I don't think I filmed this one either. I think I just wrote down some of my goals, one of which was simply to have Thanksgiving. And by that I literally just mean eat food on Thanksgiving, because we didn't go anywhere, we didn't have anyone over. November, as I mentioned, is also National Novel Writing Month. This was my 5th year of winning, and so it was a pretty big year. I talked little about this in my goal review. I did complete NaNoWriMo, but I wasn't really happy with the outcome. I don't know, I started off with a neat idea for the story, but it didn't feel like a story at the end, and I'm not sure if I want to keep working on it, but I'm still glad I did it. I really enjoy Nano. I like a nice challenge, and I feel like it pushes me. I just wish I hadn't spent the whole year writing and writing and writing and writing without having anything for it. Like, I don't feel like I'm any better. I feel like I mentioned that already, but I'm also thinking that a lot of these feelings seem familiar. Like, I wonder if I rewatch last year's review, if I'll find that I said the exact same thing and forgot about it. I'm gonna try not to forget about it as I set goals for the upcoming year. On to the last month, December, the current month. One of my favorite months, as it is also my birthday month, and I usually take some vacation, so it's just like a nice month all around. It is currently the 23rd as I'm filming this, and I've made pretty good progress in all my monthly goals, except, you might guess, not really the writing goal, which I scheduled myself for yet another month. It's only going to be a couple days between now and when I make my new goals for 2021, so hopefully I don't forget. I think the design of this month is really nice, just the right amount of shimmer. I like the hexagons. I did just set this up a little bit ago, so I wouldn't expect to suddenly hate it, but I just think it's really nice. December is all about finishing the year strong, planning for next year, and just sort of wrapping everything up. You know, finishing some projects that have been hanging around, closing some that I'm not going to finish. I do like this calendar type spread here, but I think if I do something like this again, I'm going to need to change it up a little bit, because this, as you can see, I've had to move some things around. I filled things in I thought I would do, and then I didn't, and so I had to reschedule it, and it's just a little bit messy. I'm still really excited around my end of year planning and doing all these little projects. I'm having a lot of fun getting back into game development after a couple months off. Imagine if I'd focused on game development or, you know, literally anything else instead of trying to write novels for 6 months of the year and not getting it. I'm not salty or frustrated at all, it's fine. No, it was a good year overall. I know, like, I say that with a grain of salt. I don't mean it was good for the world for 2020 to be the way it was, but I think as far as everything goes, you know, we had some rough patches, but I came through it okay, and that, I think, is a success. Like, nothing crazy happened to me personally. We did our part to stay in and protect, you know, people who need to be protected. I feel good about the choices I made this year. I'm gonna be happy to see it go, but I think I did the best with what I got. That's basically all I can say. I also am excited because I got a new set of Fudenosuke brush pens. I used to use them all the time. I love them, but I used them up and never replaced them. So I haven't had them for a while. I literally used all the ink out of them. And here we are, December 23rd. The last week of the year of 2020. I've already done some planning for how I want to spend my little vacation. I made a brainstorming page here, made a list of things that I might want to do, and I'm getting right to it. Whew, that was the whole year. All my experiments and bullet journal spreads, the patterns that I kept falling into that I didn't even realize I was falling into. If you keep a journal, I highly recommend going back once in a while and looking through it in detail, rereading your journal entries, revisiting thoughts you wrote down a month ago or a year ago or more, if you're like a veteran journal keeper. As you witnessed here in almost real time, I was able to kind of see myself beat my head against the same wall again and again without realizing what was happening. So now that I've seen it, and luckily I've done this before setting goals for next year, I can set my next year's goals with a little bit more context, a little bit more information on how I work and the sort of things I need to be on the lookout for. That's all for this section of New Year planning. And in the next video, we'll actually get to crack open my brand new journal and start setting things up. In the meantime, I have a lot of thinking to do about my goals, try to nail down some good ones with everything I've learned. I have some ideas. I actually have a pretty good sort of theme for 2021 that I've got in mind, but you'll see. Don't forget to subscribe if you don't want to miss that one. And thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned something from my own attempts at fulfilling goals. If you want, let me know in the comments what you learned about your own journaling habits this year, or what you'd like to change for next year. That's all for now. I'll be back soon with another video, and I hope to see you there. Bye bye.